Mayor Coombs, members of council, I'm Jim Golden, the city's Director of Finance. This is one of our tape presentations of our priority-based budgeting updates. Priority-based budgeting is an approach to budgeting that we've undertaken over the last few years that evaluates our city programs against the desired results that were identified by the City Council, as well as some key program attributes that are a part of priority-based budgeting. The desired results that were identified by the City Council for the organization for community programs were vibrant amenities and opportunities for all, safe community, a reliable, innovative, and resilient infrastructure, and thriving economic climate. And on this slide, you could see the weighting that was applied to these four desired results by our community through community input that was gathered in 2014. The desired results for governance programs were also identified by the City Council, and they include ensuring timely, responsive, and efficient operations, supporting city operations to be their best, providing clear, inclusive, transparent leadership and collaboration, and developing and maintaining strong partnerships, following local, state, and federal rules, regulations, and mandates, protecting, investing in, and valuing the city's human and physical capital, and prudently managing and responsibly leveraging public funds. Besides these desired results, all of the city's programs are measured against program attributes. And the priority-based budgeting program attributes were identified by the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting that pioneered this approach. The attributes that are used include the mandate to provide a program, reliance on the city to provide the program, the cost recovery of the program, and the portion of the community that is served by the program. So each of our programs are measured against each of these four attributes, as well as their ability to impact the desired results. We have, citywide, we have 1,244 programs that have been identified in this process. 527 of those are in the general fund. And then within those 1,244, we have 737 distinct programs. So we have a number of programs that are offered in multiple areas of the city, different funds as well as divisions and departments. So there is some repetition, but overall there's 737 distinct programs. Also, these 1,244 programs can be broken down that 1,082 of them are community-oriented, while the remaining 162 are governance-type programs. After all the programs are scored against the desired results and the attributes, they are then given an overall score, and they are then placed in quartiles, quartile 1 through 4, with the highest scoring programs placed in the first quartile and the lowest scoring programs placed in the fourth quartile. And they are placed across these four quartiles through a process of standard deviation. So what we're doing is we have been presenting priority-based budgeting updates to the council. We did our first 3 in person. We're taping the balance of the remaining 10 presentations, and so you'll be getting 10 different priority-based budgeting updates taped delivered to you. We have focused on 3 of the attributes through the presentations that we made to the council. The remaining updates will be on the last attribute and the 9 desired results that were identified. And we'll go through, take each of the updates, we'll go through how each program is influencing the attributes or the results. So this is the fourth priority-based budgeting update, and it's on the 4th attribute, which is cost recovery. The cost recovery attribute, programs for which there are greater program revenues collected in the form of charges for services or any types of fees or grants that are used to offset a portion or all of the cost of the program and the costs incurred to provide it. Those type of programs receive a higher score for this attribute compared to any programs that do not have as much revenue or little or no revenue from the program revenues to offset their costs. The one thing about this attribute that is a part of the priority-based budgeting principles is that the program revenue is only measured if it is given, if the customer has a choice whether or not to use the service. So this definition of cost recovery that is used for this attribute only comes into play where it's a program or a customer has a choice whether or not they want to use the service. So the way the cost recovery is measured and scored is a score of 4 is given if fees are generated to cover 75% to 100% of the cost to provide the program. A 3 if fees generate covers 50 to 74% of the cost to provide the program. Score of 2 is between 25 to 49% of the cost to provide the program. Score of 1 if it's anywhere from 1 to 24% of the cost of the program is offset by fees. And then finally, there's a score of 0 if there are no fees generated to cover the cost to provide the program. So what we have here is we are doing a focus here. This summary focuses on both the number of programs and the cost of programs. And this summary is broken down by the major city departments as our structure is currently defined. So we have anywhere from very large departments like Public Works, Natural Resources, and Public Safety on here. And then also we have some non-departmental type areas such as Human Resources or the Mayor and Council. So the size and the amount of dollars in each of these budgets, which are reflected in the last column that it's shaded, gives the total programs, the total cost for each of these areas. For instance, you can see that we're focusing here on the Human Resources, having 11 programs and $990,000 of a budget, versus a large department down below here where the pointer's looking at Public Works and Natural Resources with 550 programs and $44 million of a budget. So this has in total taking our 1,244 programs and $183 million of overall city budget, and it is breaking these down to the programs and the cost by each of the 5 levels of scoring for this cost recovery attribute. So the first column here is where the fees cover 75% to 100% of the cost. That's a score of a 4. And you can see that Community Services has the most programs that are within this category at 48 programs. Where fees covers 50 to 74% of the cost. Planning and Development Services have the most programs at only 4 programs, but you can see overall we only have 7 programs that actually fall into this category citywide, so there's not a large representation in that score of 50 to 74% of the cost. 25 to 49% of the cost, Public Safety has the most programs at 14 programs. From fees covering 1 to 24% of the cost, Public Works and Natural Resources has 19 programs. And then where fees do not cover the cost at all, Public Works and Natural Resources again has the most programs here and 518 programs. Focusing on the cost of the programs, getting back to the first column again, where fees cover 75% to 100% of the cost. You see Community Services has the leading cost there at $6.8 million. Planning and Development Services is next in the 50 to 74% category at 705,000 programs. And then for cost covering from 25 to 49% of the cost, public safety has 1.4 million of cost of programs. And then where fees cover 1% to 24% of the cost, community services have $1.87 million of cost of those programs. And then finally, where fees do not cover the cost, we have power and communications at $60 million. Now, what that's showing is that the largest program in power and communications, of course, is electric purchase power. Now, obviously, those costs are offset by electric user fees. But getting back into how this attribute is measured, it is only measured if the customers have a choice. And with electric service, customers really have no choice. We are a monopoly. We provide that service to all of our customers, versus if we were looking at broadband service, where we do compete and where our customers do have a choice. So the broadband revenue actually is considered part of our cost recovery, as opposed to most of our other utility rate revenue, which the way things are measured by the priority-based budgeting principles. Currently, those dollars are not considered as part of the cost recovery here. So now we're going to move into the resource alignment diagnostic tool and take a look at some of the snapshots of the RAD tool. And we're going to do it for looking at the general fund summary and the cost recovery for programs within the general fund alone. So the general fund is 527 programs, and they account for $65.4 million in the 2014 budget. So we'll be looking at how the general fund fares in relationship to cost recovery. You can look at these actual snapshots as well on the prioritization update that is delivered to you with this presentation. And it starts on page 11 of that prioritization update. That's the first snapshot page that we'll be looking at. So bear with me just a second. And this here then would be a picture of our resource alignment diagnostic tool, or RAD tool. And it is, again, found on page 11 of your packet and your priority-based budgeting update. First here, this screen is looking at, for the general fund, those programs where the fees cover 75 to 100% of the cost. So again, hopefully you can see the pointer here as I'm using it to move across the screen. But if you see on the right side of this screen, it shows that we have 45 programs in the general fund that fall into this category. Now, they budgeted at a total cost of $4.8 million. Now, what you can see on the graph is where these programs fall in the different quartiles based on their overall scores, not just on their scores based on cost recovery, but their overall scores against all the desired results and all the attributes. So you can see that we have, and they are also showing up here on this table below, that you have 8 programs, $1.1 million worth of programs in quartile 1. We see the largest amount of dollars in programs are over here in quartile 2, 19 programs at $2.9 million. And you can follow that further below it, as well as on this graph screen here as well. So overall, 7.3% of the total general fund budget of $65.4 million. We have $4.78 million that fall into these categories of cost recovery from 75 to 100%. So, bear with me just a second. So I can change the filter to move to the next screen. So now you'll find this on page 12 of your prioritization update. This is looking at programs which have fees that cover 50 to 75% of the cost. Again, as I mentioned before, there's not a lot of programs that fall into this category. We have within the general fund 6 programs for a total of $835,000. And you can see up above here that dollar-wise, the majority of these dollars, there's $693,000 worth of this is in the first quartile for 3 programs. And we also have a couple of programs in quartile 2 and 1 in quartile 3 here for smaller dollar amounts. So this does not make it up a large percentage of the general fund budget. 6 programs, $835,000 at 1.3% of the general fund budget. So we'll move to back to the filter again, and okay, so now this is looking at, again, general fund programs for which fees cover 25 to 50% of the program cost. We have here 16 of our total 527 programs are in this category. They're budgeted at $1.4 million. And again, you can see most of those are for quartile 1 type programs. We have 11 programs in that quartile at $1.2 million. Overall, the $1.4 million for these 16 programs, it's only 2.17% of the total general fund budget. And then we'll move again to the next filter level. And now here we have programs for which fees cover 1% to 24% of the cost of the service. We have 15 programs here in the general fund, budgeted at $2.18 million. That's 3.3% of the general fund budget. You'll notice that we have a large dollar amount here shown in quartile 1. It's $1.335 million for 4 programs. In quartile 2, about almost $700,000 for 5 programs. And we have $143,000 in quartile 3. And so the final filter criteria level is for the 0 score. And that would be for programs for which there are no fees generated to cover the cost of the service. And the majority of the general fund programs do fall into this category. So we have 445 programs in the general fund. There's $56.2 million of that general fund budget. That's almost 86% of the general fund budget that fall into this category where there are no fees generated to cover the service. Again, if it's a service that the customers choose to take rather than have to take. And that, of course, most of our general fund services, many of them are offset by sales taxes and property taxes as opposed to user fees. And so it makes sense that there's a large percentage of the dollars of the general fund budget that fall into this category. Okay, so I'm going to move back to PowerPoint. Oh, the wrong direction. So, okay, so included in your priority-based your prioritization update, after the screenshots, you have pages and pages of data, which is all of the individual program data. So what I've been giving you is summary data. If you wanted to be able to take a look at how an individual program scores against this cost recovery attribute, It's all included in the 2 lists that are included at the end of the update. One of them is for general fund programs alone, and then the other list is for all other funds besides the general fund. Those lists are sorted first by the mandate, being the cost recovery mandate, and then you can find they sort by department and then by division, and then you will find them listed in order of quartile from the highest quartile to the lowest quartile. So on the cost recovery attribute, the staff does believe that there is a disconnect in that the cost recovery underneath the priority-based budget principles is being measured only if the customer chooses whether or not to use the service. So what this does in a sense is it doesn't give any credit for cost recovery for some pretty significant city services such as utility services that I mentioned before, like electric, where there's virtually 100% of the costs are recovered through the city's utility rates. If we were to change this measurement so that our cost recovery is measured purely based on fees for service and not whether the customer has a choice or not, our cost recovery for our total programs would change from a total right now that's in the neighborhood of about $10.5 million for our total city programs of $183 million. It would rise to over $100 million of cost recovery overall. So really the principles of the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting, they do not put a value on a program's cost recovery alone unless the citizen can choose whether or not they are going to use it. So while this does make cost recovery a factor in the overall prioritization score, it seems to make customer choice an even higher factor. So staff does believe that the priority of a program derived from this attribute really should be driven by its cost recovery regardless of choice. We would propose that beginning in 2015, we change the use of this attribute to reflect cost recovering by itself as opposed to based on choice alone. So that's the extent of this presentation on this cost recovery attribute. If council has any questions on this information that I've presented, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. You can contact me at my number is 303-651-8629, or also you can contact me by email at jim.golden@longmontcolorado.gov. Thanks very much for your attention.